Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of The Visible Workplace with myself, Dr. Tom Rolley, coming to you live from Broken Head, New South Wales. Today, we are continuing a conversation that we have been having for the last 3 weeks, and that is around the Warrior's Way. Now, this is a system that is designed to get things done, and in doing that, be able to live a life that is beyond what most people might think is possible. This way has been developed over the last, 12 years. First brought to the market by Garrett J in 2012. And at the beginning, they didn't know too much. They were just like, you know what? We're going to notice. They were noticing a couple of things that if they trained and if they meditated and if they learnt a few things about business, then they got better results. This is a long time ago. And since then, it evolved into a very powerful system. We have been over the last 2 weeks looking at the first two parts of those, the code and the door. Now, the code is absolutely required for this. And it's going to be required for today's discussion around the game as well. But if you haven't gone and listened to those, then my encouragement is to go back and review both of those, both the code and the door. And in the door episode, I discussed why I was covering that first. And that is because it is a methodology to get things done each week. But it opens up a problem, which is, well, where are we going? Where am I going? And if you go back and listen to last week's episode, we were looking at the purpose of the door first is that it's easier to direct a moving vehicle than one that is stationary. If you take an analogy like a car and say, hey, I'm driving, but I'm driving in the wrong direction, then it's easier to stop and turn that vehicle around or take a 90-degree turn to the left or 90-degree turn to the right, or make changes in the direction to a moving vehicle. But if that vehicle was stopped, stationary, going nowhere, then even if it's pointed in the right direction, then you're still not going to get anywhere. And so the reason for dealing with the door first was that, hey, if you're already getting things done and you have a consistent daily system for executing 4 things per day, 5 days a week, 20 things getting done, then even if you are off course, then you have momentum, you have the ability to pivot. So today we're going to look at the game. And the game is very powerful when combined with the door because it allows you to now set a direction. So what sort of problems could you be facing right now without having this direction sorted? Well, number one, you've got no direction at all. And this is straight out of Alice in Wonderland when she meets the Cheshire Cat. It's like, well, which way do you want to go? And the Cheshire Cat's asked that to Alice, and she says, well, I don't know where I want to go. And then he says, well, it doesn't really matter which direction you go. You can go left, you can go right, because there is no final destination. Both of them work. But if Alice had a destination, then the cat could have provided some information, some helpful direction, say, well, if you want to go to the castle, it's left. If you want to go to the lake, it's right. But since she didn't have a direction and there was no direction, well, none of those instructions were valuable at all. Next up, even if we do have a direction, the targets have been set too small. Now, this is tempting to set small targets. But before we go there, actually, we need to look at what the game actually is. The game is a 12-month target, a 12-month game. So that 12 months becomes important when these targets are set too small. That it is tempting to go too small because the ability to hit a smaller target, hopefully, is easier. Now, that may not be true at all, but nonetheless, the temptation is to set the targets small so that you can hit them. But over 12 months, if you don't set them big enough, then you're going to run into a couple of other issues. One is, hey, this doesn't inspire me. And number two is an idea that comes from 10x is easier than 2x by Ben Hardy. And this book was very interesting. It basically said that if you set big targets, then the ability to get those is limited in the methodologies that can do that. That if you set a double target, then there's 15 different ways to do that, versus if you set a 10x target, i.e. a big or an impossible target, then there's actually very few ways to do that. And this simplifies it, and it forces choosing those methods because they will actually get the results. Next up, we've got a 12-month game, but we've got no stepping stones to get there. 12 months is a long time for most of us. And so if there are no stepping stones, then there's no ability to go, oh, well, where do I need to get to next? And the analogy for this is a lot like flying from Sydney to Los Angeles or flying in a rocket from here to the moon, that you are off course a vast amount of the time, and it's the course corrections that actually make the difference. It's like, okay, well, we're going to go 100 kilometers out and then see where we are. Oh, we're about 500 meters off. Okay, course correct. At 200 kilometers out, oh, we're still about 200 meters off. Okay, correct. Oh, we've overcorrected, correcting throughout that entire time period, so that when we arrive close to the destination, it's only a small correction. Versus if we just set that one target, then we could be off a small amount at the beginning, and that ends up being a big difference. A lot like a golf shot. Golf shot has no ability to be course corrected once it begins. And so if it's off by 3 degrees at the beginning, then that ends up being 30 meters, 40 meters off course at the end. But having stepping stones allows us to have the opportunity for course corrections. And this then opens up into, well, what does this mean? If you had these problems solved, what could you have? Well, you can have a very interesting discussion that every 12 months, an opportunity would come to envisage the future, envision the future, making up words at this point. Envision the calling, envision the future. What's going to be in 12 months? An ability to connect into what could be possible. And one of the dangers of this is that there has been a certain momentum in your life to get you to that place. And so the temptation is just to continue that. Yet that stopping point, let's call it today, and in 12 months' time, I want to get somewhere else. But in today's opportunity, I could continue with the momentum of where I'm heading, but I could also pivot left. I could also pivot right. I could also look around from the top of the mountain that I'm on at the moment and select from a number of different 12-month possibilities. And I'd encourage you to do this rather than just looking back and looking to where we are today and then continuing in a direct line of what's going on. That might well be the opportunity and the best choice, but at least stopping and choosing and recognizing, you know what, I could pivot here. I could change here. Maybe it's only a small direction. I'm going to go 10% to the left, 10% to the right, or maybe it's a hard left and a hard right. But that opportunity comes to envisage a whole different, did I just say envisions again? Oh my goodness. Envision a number of different 12-month possibilities. This is a really big opportunity for you. And then selecting one of those. So while there might be 10 different opportunities, what is the one after having reviewed all of those that you're going to go for? And setting that as a 12-month target. Now, the opportunity here is to extend the mind. That what might come first to mind in that, once we set that direction, is something that is reasonable. It's a reasonable expansion. Maybe it's 10% more, 20% more. And then there could be an opportunity for something that is a radical transformation. And this would be, oh, geez, it's still possible, but it was going to require a radical transformation in myself. And then beyond that is something that is literally impossible right now. In 12 months' time, that something that is literally impossible, not even able to be seen or believed could be done, could become your reality in 12 months' time. And you might wonder how that is. Well, basically, we're going to compress a whole lot of growth into 12 months. And this is demanding. This requires something more than most people are choosing to live. And so we're going to look at that next week and the week after with two more tools for this, which are the stack and the core. And these give the ability to condense time and to hit exponential growth. But we'll talk about those next week. But know that they are critical tools in this whole thing. But the game, we've got this opportunity to set a 12-month target that is literally impossible right now. Then, with that 12 months, stepping it back, and each month having a target, a mission, a monthly mission that takes us in that direction of the impossible game. What I want you to conceive of here is that in the first month, there might only be a linear growth. But in the second month, we're starting to get just the smallest linear plus a little bit of benefit of the first month. And the third month, the same, linear plus the improvement from second month and first month. And if we continue on this, what we're going to see is not a linear line from today to the impossible game in 12 months' time, but rather an exponential one. That the work done in month one builds into month two, into month three, into month four, into month five. And what we see is an exponential growth. And this is how the impossible can be made into reality. There's also a second benefit of the monthly missions, and that is an opportunity to say, well, where am I? Not only in reference to the 12-month target, the 12-month impossible game, but also the monthly mission. Did I hit it? Am I on track with the work that I decided was going to be done that month? And if I did, awesome. And if I didn't, well, what's the consequences of that? And what needs to be pivoted and changed in order to set the next monthly target in alignment to where we're going, but also make sure it gets done? How can we make sure that these monthly missions get done? Well, that's where the door comes in. If we were able to have a 12-month impossible game and a monthly mission that lined up with that, and then we had a consistent mechanism for making 4 or 5 weekly expansions towards that monthly mission, also known as the door, then our chances of getting to both the monthly mission and the impossible game go way up. And this is the difference between a door that is set randomly or set without direction versus a weekly door that is set with intention of hitting a monthly mission. Week 1 door takes us closer. Week 2 door takes us closer. Week 3 door takes us closer. Week 4 day door opens up the monthly mission. And then we repeat that for month 2, repeat that for month 3, repeat that for month 4. That these weekly doors are not random, but they are aligned to the monthly mission. Hit the monthly mission, repeat that 12 times, and the impossible becomes the reality. This is why the system works, at least in theory, because what you're not seeing is the challenge of actually getting that work done each day. But I want you to conceptually see how simple this actually is. Each day, workday, we've got 4 things that get done, and in that week, the door gets opened. Each week, that door opens, takes us towards the monthly mission getting done. And each month, the monthly mission getting done takes us towards the 12 monthly target. This is a very, very powerful system. And I want you just to contrast it with another methodology that you may have seen, which is quarterly targets. The issue are two things. One is that the ability to course correct only comes 4 times per year instead of 12. And the second problem that I ran into is that if I was off course, let's say I'm 7 weeks into the quarter and I'm just like, this is not working, then I would have to wait another 5 weeks before getting that opportunity to realign to the target. Months are fast, but they're long enough to make some serious progress. Quarters are longer. They just are. And if it's way off course, then it is a significant problem. This monthly mission towards a 12-monthly goal is extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. It's short enough to know whether you hit it or not. It's short enough to get points on the graph of like, are we on track? And it is powerful enough that it reinforces the wins to say, let's go again, let's go again, let's go again. So I hope that you're seeing this. The game itself is a game of setting where we are today, selecting the impossible game for 12 months, literally impossible, then setting monthly missions and opening weekly doors that hit the monthly mission, hit the monthly missions, 12 of them, and open up the impossible game. This is a very powerful system. So let's talk about a couple of things to do here. Number one is selecting that vision. And I want you to consider that your ability to select an appropriate vision requires you to understand where you are today. That when you look at the facts of your life today, this is what you must own. This is what you must say, you know what, this is where I am, good, bad, or ugly. And by getting clear on where you are today, that is the opportunity to then look around. If you lie to yourself about where you are today, how much money you're making, what state your relationships are in, what state your spirituality is in, what state your body is in, and you lie about that and say, I'm not where I am, I'm over there, then when you look from that place, you have already infused the 12-month vision with lies. This is a significant problem. Can you imagine flying an airplane where the pilots pretended that they were 50 feet to the left? Imagine the difficulties of this. And then another plane was pretending that they were 120 feet to the right. No one would know where the planes actually were. So getting clear on where you are today is an essential part of the game. And if you do that and you are clear on where you are, even if it is ugly and horrible and difficult to say, you know what, this is where I am, that gives you a shot. It gives you the chance to say, you know what, this is where I am. I don't want this. What I want is that. And I'm willing to do the work that's going to get me there. And in selecting that vision, it becomes more real. I really like the idea of a book called Be Your Future Self Now, as if that future self could talk to you and advise you, as if that was actually real. And maybe it is. That there's a time in 12 months' time, unless you die, that you will be living, and it is possible that you are looking back to what's happened today and you can guide yourself. Now, this is a little woo-woo. This is a little, well, geez, have we got any empiric evidence for this? But For whatever reason, connecting to your future self that is living that reality, perhaps only in imagination, can still provide valid guidance to you and say, well, I did not do that step, but I did do this step. That step comes later. That step is in 3 months' time. Take this step now. And receiving this guidance from your future self could be very powerful. Next up, the power of the exponential. Already described that. But instead of it being a linear path, that work done each week, even if it doesn't appear to move the dial very much, if it is done in the right direction and it is done, then over the year, we are going to see a compounding effect. Even on this podcast, as I sit here today, I notice some obvious differences than when I began. Number one, podcast mic. Number two, M Audio Air that the mic feeds into. Number three, a high quality cable that connects them. Number four, the Sony camera. None of these things were in existence when I began. In fact, number five, the Geneon light. All of these have been added over the time that we've been doing the podcast. And each of them was done essentially one at a time. The light was added, then the mic was added, then the camera was added. And so the quality of this podcast is exponentially better than it was when it began. And yet it began with the basics. Was there a microphone? Yes, there was. It was in my laptop. Was there a camera? Yes, there was. It was in my laptop. Was there a light? No, there was no light. But the light was added in order to improve the quality. And now the podcast quality is exponentially better than it was. Steps taken. Each of those products selected what microphone to choose, what camera to choose, what light to choose, making those selections, ordering them, installing them, checking they work, making sure they work on Zoom. All of these small steps that end up dramatically improving performance. And then guess what? Every time I shoot the podcast, that standard continues. I don't know what the next improvement is. That hasn't appeared yet. But if it does, it's like, oh, okay, cool. That is the next level of improvement that will happen. The next thing I want you to catch is that these monthly missions are lined, the doors are lined up to the missions. This is critical. The missions line up to the game, the doors line up to the missions. Everything is in that direction. This is not a random walk in the park. The benefit of the game is that you set the direction and then you work weekly towards monthly, monthly towards yearly, and everything lines up so these things are done. Finally, I want to introduce to you a part of the game that happens each week on a Sunday. It's called the General's Tent. Remember how we were discussing about the ability to course correct? Well, that requires a regular set time to look at what happened in that last week, to look at where you are right now, to look at what the month mission is, and to look at what the 12 monthly target is. These opportunities to look provide lessons. Hey, we thought that would work. It didn't work. I'm going to try this instead. Or, hey, it did work. How can I apply that to other areas in my life? But looking at what got done over the week, an opportunity to look at where you are now, setting the new targets requires you to know what those targets are. And in that General's Tent, choosing the door for the next week, lining it up to the mission. This is a very potent experience. It takes somewhere between an hour and 2 hours on a Sunday, and it sets you up for a week ahead where things are pre-planned. You're going to get these things done. And if those things get done, then you will be further along than you were just by randomly selecting things each day. It's a relatively inefficient method for getting things done. in comparison to 12-month, monthly, weekly, daily. Execute, 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 and repeat. It has a certain boring cadence, but it is highly effective at getting you from today to a dream reality, an impossible vision that literally is not possible at all for you. And yet the application of this methodology, the combination of the game and the door, all on a foundation of telling the truth, the code, this is a powerful, powerful mechanism for getting things done. If you want some more help around this, head over to www.magicboards.io and check out the products there. There is software that can help, and there is also training for you if you want to reach out and ask for that. I'm very happy to help you with that. Next week, I'm going to jump into 2 more components of living this method. And these serve to allow you to have the power to get the things done. You see, it's all very good to have a vision, all very good to have a mission, all very good to have a door, all very good to have a hit for the day. But if they don't get done, it doesn't matter. None of it matters. But if it do get done, then hey, this gets you to a transformed reality. And the 2 tools that you need, we will be covering in the next 2 weeks. Number 1, the stack. Number 2, the core. Look forward to sharing those with you. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have got some value out of this, then please like, subscribe, and give us a rating on the relevant channels that you are watching on. And if you know someone struggling with this, with business, with life, then please share it up. Look forward to seeing you next week. Catch you then. Thanks for joining us at the Visual Workplace. This is a notification that the information and ideas discussed here are general in nature and do not take into account your specific circumstances. You should seek specialist advice for any medical, financial, emotional, mental, or other difficulties that you are facing with appropriate specialists and professionals so that they can apply your specific circumstances and give you the required advice. Thank you for joining us, but this is also a notification that all information is indeed general in nature and not specific for your personal circumstances.